what the project would be, and that was part of the challenge we had when preparing how the microservices were going to work in Hockey Eye. And Oscar actually recommended for us to take a couple of courses on domain-driven design, so that was also useful to get into that mindset.
Yeah, the microservices are a reflex of whatever enterprise you're proposing a solution to. Depending on the departments, the specialties, there's a microservice for it. Okay. Next one. Besides, you were saved because of infrastructure as code last night. You were able to deploy it in functions. What are the benefits you think infrastructure as code?
As we mentioned in one slide, portability, stability. I would like to highlight stability because this guarantees that no matter which cloud provider, which computer is behind that infrastructure, it will run the same way that it ran before or why it's supposed to run. So I think stability.
And I think it's important to mention the backup, as you said, and we tested yesterday, because we don't have to create each Lambda again in a new account. So we just need to push all the things that we have on the infrastructure as a code in Terraform and just change some variables. So it's quicker and it's good backup for us as a team if something is failed.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that your own project saved you.
I would also in that part, I would also like to add that we humans, we are not machines. So if we are trying to get our infrastructure up manually using the console provided by the cloud providers, we could easily miss a checkbox, and that would make a difference in our infrastructure. So that's the important part for me of infrastructure as code, because a script does not change in any way unless you manually change it. But we as humans, we can easily miss a checkbox, a feature, a letter, or something that will impact us on what we are deploying.
So how would you summarize that you just said and sell to somebody, sell to an IT manager that doesn't know anything about automation, the importance of spending, for example, 30–40% of the sprint or part of the department automating the infrastructure?
I will highlight stability because it guarantees that it will run with the current architecture. But I would also like to add an economic side, because we will pay less hours for an engineer to build this architecture. And also in creativity matters, we could have developers working on new features and creative features instead of doing this repetitive work, which is deploying lambdas in an interface.
I think one of the benefits is the time management. So troubleshooting multiple like hundreds of functions or services in cloud solution is complicated, but you could say that all of the time that would be spent trying to troubleshoot and trying to pinpoint which error or which function is erroring could be used as Alejandro said, to innovate and to work on new features, and I think that's good.
Also, I think it's important to mention that in the other hand, all the benefits, you have to have like you have to be very careful with the permissions in the, like using infrastructure as a code, because yesterday we faced this problem with the AWS account. We just migrate that into the another account, but we face other problems with permissions and all the things that in the other account we have, and the other account it doesn't have. So you have to be very careful with that, and with all the things that you said when you set up the environment.
Yeah, the infrastructure stuff needs to include security parts. Yeah. Okay. Last one, because I need to leave time for
the rest.
You mentioned something about, let me see, which one I want to do. Okay. Real life scenarios, which in demo everything works fine, but when you do a real life scenario, sometimes the thing that they sell you doesn't work that good or becomes very difficult to maintain. Which of all the technology that you have to learn, you learned that it wasn't as good as it sounds in paper when you put a real life scenario. Like each one if you want.
I think I could summarize not in technologies, but in the project as a whole. When we entered Allied, we thought that we were going to meet with an architecture already automatized, but that wasn't the case. So in educational matters, one thinks that, okay, I build my pipeline and then I start deploying and everything is automated. But when we entered the company, we were faced that we had this great architecture with hundreds of users that we needed to automate. And it was not that easy as doing an online or a lab, because we were challenged with real life users that if I messed up the architecture, they were going to notice.
Okay. Good example.
I would say that I would like to use this phrase that not everything is as easy as it seems on paper. Because we could see a few courses on having a CI/CD pipeline or deploying to AWS, but when we try to do it in a production environment or in a real life environment, we have to face the IAM access keys, for example, for deploying the application. We have problems with Docker between Linux distributions on the agent. Amazon Linux had a few problems that Ubuntu did not have, some permissions to give to the pipeline. So we can learn something, but I would say that not when we have to do it is the real exam, the real compromise for us, where we notice what problems we can face and the solutions that we are able to provide.
Yeah, I would say that I think almost the same as my teammates, but just to mention like a specific technology and thing we thought when we were in all of these experiences is Jenkins. When we enter the DevOps industry and the subjects, you hear Jenkins in all of the places. You have to use Jenkins for this and for that. And when we initially tried to use it, we face that it's complicated, it's not intuitive, and it has some things that you have to learn and to experience in order for it to work correctly. And in that terms, we also got the chance to work with Buddy, for example, and with Azure DevOps pipelines. And in those cases, the conclusion there is that there are trade-offs for these technologies. Maybe Jenkins initially is difficult to learn and to apply, but it's much more flexible than Buddy, for example. And Azure Pipelines is useful because it's intuitive and you can modify the configuration file easily, and it has a lot of integrations with other technologies, but maybe there's not a plugin that Jenkins has. So at the end, it's also a thing of trade-offs and decisions.
And I also want to add, as a professional experience that we have on Allied, on a project, it was the use of entity framework, because when we get into it, it was like you don't have to make queries anymore. There is an easy way to manage your database.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. When we faced the migrations, it was a total disaster for us at the first time.
Of course.
Because it's sometimes when you create, when I was working with Jose and me, and we work in different branches, and he created a new migration, and also I created another one, and we merged them. It was a completely mess. So we have to manage all those conflicts, how to get the things done on a manner that all the code still the same, all the migrations, all the tables has no problems with the other, and also even in my computer, because sometimes when I create like a migration, I think I could use it with no problem. When it comes to a QA environment, the pipeline just gets some troubles getting those migrations done. So I think that was like a big challenge we have. I think important thing. to learn.
Do you know if Gerardo has something to ask?
Yeah, I have some questions. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation, for your work. I think this is very important for the country, for the productivity of our local companies. And I just wanted to highlight this. Thank you very much for working on this. So first, I have, well, I think you received this document.
Yes.
And there are some questions that I wasn't able, maybe you said it, but I didn't quite get it. For example, which were the parts that you were not capable of automating, and why? This is one of the things I didn't catch. So this is my first question.
So one of the challenge we faced through the sprints we had was the automation with all the 3 repos that we were using. Because as in the presentation we mentioned, we have GitHub that was our main repo, and then we have Bitbucket, we have GitLab, and also the Azure repo. When we tried to merge all the code that was in each repo, it gave us a lot of problems because we have to set up the webhooks that doesn't work as expected in each repo, and also like getting the logic to know